enigmatic, misunderstood, and essential to our oceans. But these important animals are under immense pressure. As the Save Our Seas Foundation, we're here to help. Through supporting research, conservation, and education, we work to ensure a future for sharks and rays. The Save Our Seas Foundation. Together, we can make a difference.
As we head towards a population of 8 billion people, our ocean has come to mean many different things to all the human beings living on this blue planet. She is the primary provider of protein, or an income for some, while for others, she is a place of spiritual significance, or a place to find peace. A playground, a source of magic and wonder. Some even refer to her as home. Around the world, ocean lovers have been fighting to protect the blue future for us all. Because we choose sustainable seafood, we support an industry that's committed to healthy fish stocks and maintaining jobs, while giving other species and their ecosystems a chance to recover. Because we work together as concerned citizens, NGOs, and governments, some endangered sharks are being protected. Because we value wildlife, we can ensure that species are worth more alive than dead. Because scientists have the support to study our oceans, special species and important places can be conserved. Because we stand up for people's historical and cultural ties to the ocean, their spiritual connections can be respected. There's a lot of hope to hold on to. Let's keep working together. Every action counts.
These examples show us that the work we do does make a difference. This World Oceans Day, let's take heart and take energy from these successes and keep moving forward.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Save Our Seas Foundation Distinguished Speaker Series. My name is Lance. I'm the Director of Environmental Sustainability at the Museum of Discovery and Science in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's so nice to have you here tonight to join us. We have a wonderful speaker lined up tonight, Jasmin Graham, the President and CEO of Minorities in Shark Science and administrator of the Gill Guardians, an education-based organization looking to educate the world about shark science and get people involved. So Jasmin will be joining us this evening. I would like to say just a few little housekeeping things before Jasmin comes on. You're more than welcome to ask questions tonight. We really would like you to get involved. Ask questions, just please post them into the chat. If you have any questions as we're going forward, don't feel like you have to wait till the end. Please go ahead and post them into the chat. And if everyone wouldn't mind just staying muted throughout, that'd be great. As Jasmin's giving her presentation, if something comes to your brain and about what she's talking about, please just post it in there and I will ask on your behalf. And then we'll have some time at the end for more detailed questions as well. Well, welcome, Jasmin, to tonight's speaker series. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. We're happy to have you. Well, I'll introduce you to the audience really quick. So Jasmine is a shark and ray ecology and evolution specialist with past research topics, including the movement and ecology of small-toothed sawfish and the phylogeny of hammerhead sharks. Jasmine is a member of the American Elasmobranch Society and served on its Student Affairs Committee for 2 years. She has completed internships with the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center, Fort Johnson Marine Lab, and the FWC Division of Marine Fisheries Management here in Florida, and has worked as an instructor for the Saturdays at the Sea program through the Florida State University Office of STEM Teaching Activities. Science education and making science more accessible for everyone are her passions, and they have led Jasmine to become the project coordinator for the Marsai Lace Project, which focuses on researching and promoting best practices to recruit, support, and maintain minority students in the marine science. Jasmine is also the co-founder of Minorities in Shark Sciences, an organization dedicated to promoting diversity in shark science. Jasmine is now actively working to open doors that will help underrepresented minority students to join the exciting field of marine science. So thank you for your amazing work, Jasmine. Like I said, we're happy to have you here tonight. I'll ask you to share your screen. I know you have something prepared for us this evening to tell us all about Gill Guardians and Minorities in Shark Sciences.
Great. Thank you, Lance. I'm really excited to talk to everyone today about sharks, which is my favorite subject to talk about. And I will start by talking a little bit about myself and who I am and the work that I do. And then I'll close out by talking about Minorities in Shark Sciences and our Gill Guardians program. So just to get started who I am many things, including a scientist. And so I have a lot of different interests, a lot of passions, and all of these things I think make me a better scientist. And I love to start out by talking about all of the things that I am besides being a scientist, because scientists are people too. And I think sometimes we forget that. And I'm just like anyone else playing board games on the weekends. And I love musical theater. So I love to perform. I love wigs. This is one of my favorite.
I love all the things not included in your official bio. This is fantastic. Maybe you can. Are you going to sing for us this evening?
I charge extra for that. So yeah, I'm a lot of things, but I'm also a scientist. And so I'm going to talk a lot about the science that I do, also the education work that we do, and the conservation work that we do, and social justice. So when people ask, what do I do? It's a complicated answer that all boils down to this Venn diagram. So I am interested in marine conservation because I believe that it's really important to protect our marine ecosystems. They make up 70% of our planet. A lot of the diversity that we have comes from the oceans. And particularly, I'm passionate about sharks and rays because they don't get as much love as they should get. There's a lot of sort of negative perceptions around sharks. A lot of people don't realize just how important they are to the ecosystem. And so I work on moving folks from fear to fascination when it comes to sharks. And I do that through science education, because I think whenever people have information and knowledge, they can overcome these fears. A lot of fear is based on not knowing. Fear of the unknown, misinformation, misconceptions, and the way that we combat that is through education. So if we want to talk about conserving the marine animals, particularly sharks, we need to make sure that everyone is on board. We all share the same planet. And so in order to instill this importance, people have to know about it, because a lot of people don't live by the ocean. A lot of people aren't going to have direct interactions with sharks and other ocean animals. And so bringing that information to them is really important. The social justice piece is also really important because everyone deserves to know and everyone deserves to be part of decision making because everyone is impacted because, again, we all share the same planet. And so if we're only educating certain people and we're only involving certain people in the marine science and marine conservation conversations, then we're missing out on perspectives and ideas and thoughts. And so therefore we're not as innovative because we don't see the problem from all of the angles because we only have certain perspectives involved. And so that's why social justice is really important for me, particularly environmental justice, because there is a disproportion of how people experience the consequences of ecological disasters and things like that. So sea level rise affects different people in different ways. Lack of fishing stocks or affects different people different ways. Some people, if the fish go away, they have other things to eat. Other people, they don't have anything to eat. So we have to keep that in mind as we start thinking about marine conservation, the consequences of different decisions and inaction when it comes to making changes. So all that to say, I do a lot of things. As Lance mentioned, in my science side of things, I focus mostly on evolution and ecology. So I'll talk a little bit about some past projects that I've done. So the first one that I'll talk about is hammerhead shark evolution. So many people know about hammerheads, at least the great hammerhead, and it's a very iconic group of animals because they have these weird, strange heads that look like little hammers. But a thing that people don't know, a lot of people, is that there's actually 10 species of hammerheads. A lot of people think there's just one. There's 10 different species of hammerheads, and they vary in size. Their head size varies, and I am really interested in how something like that comes to exist. I'm sure we've all looked at a hammerhead and asked why. And so that's what I'm interested in. Why do they have these weird head shapes? As you can see, I do that by using CT scanning. So there's a little lemon shark going through the CT scanner, for an example. And so I do a lot of CT scanning and digital imaging, which you can see here, to look at their anatomy and understand how different anatomical structures are the same and different across different species to try to see who's related to who. I also did some lab things where I was looking at the genetics to see how the genes differed across the different species. And if you're interested in learning more about this work, you can find it in the Ecology and Evolution chapter of the Minorities in Shark Sciences book. I'm just going to briefly touch on things that I've done, but I also will have information about resources if you want to really dive into this area of work. So I also do a lot of work with the small-toothed sawfish. So here are two pictures. The one with me squatting in the water is a baby sawfish, and the one with me in the orange is almost adult sawfish. So she was like nearing maturity. So sawfish get to be 15 feet long. So they are very big animals. So they go from that little adorable little thing over there to massive 15-foot animals. So that's pretty neat.
That's a large animal there next to you. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. When I tell people that this picture is not even a full-grown adult, they're like blown away.
Yeah.
So sawfish are super cool because they look like they have saws on their face, hence their name. That is called a rostrum. That is the scientific term for it, in case you're ever on Jeopardy. And they use that to hunt and to defend themselves. So they swing it. I like to say, if you've ever played Fruit Ninja, a little game on your phone, it's very similar to that, slice and dice. That's how they use that. And so I look at, since they are a critically endangered species, meaning that there's very few of them left in the world. So when we talk about the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, they rate things based on how likely they are to go extinct. And the step right before extinction is critically endangered. So this species is as bad off as a species can be without being labeled extinct. So there's not a lot of them left, but there is a stronghold here in Florida. And so I study the Florida population to better understand how we can protect them. So the part of what I do is looking at where they spend a lot of time. And then I also look at the threats that they may encounter in these places, particularly bycatch, which is accidental catching in commercial fisheries. So no one is targeting sawfish in the commercial fishery industry, but they do accidentally catch them, especially in shrimp trawl nets. And so I'm looking at where those incidents are likely to occur so that we can build regulations around that and basically have people fish in different places than the sawfish are at the times of year that sawfish are there. And again, I have the titles of these papers if you are interested and want to go dive deeper into this.
Yeah, can I ask? So we have a lot of not a lot, but we do have sawfish here in South Florida, where our museum is located.
Mm-hmm.
Where could you find sawfish living in South Florida waters?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Everglades National Park is a big hotspot for sawfish. You also can find them throughout Florida Bay with regularity. I say in quotes because they are critically endangered, so they're not everywhere, but that is where you would find them the most. And along the Florida Keys. So that's sort of their core area. However, part of the population migrates during the summer. So actually right now, early May is when they start moving. So people slightly north of South Florida might have the chance of seeing them. So they start showing up in Tampa, where I live, about mid to late May. And they'll be around until October. But yeah, those areas, they're there all year. The Everglades National Park, Florida Bay, Florida Keys area. There's been a lot of reports in Miami and off the coast of Jupiter, Florida, especially whenever they start migrating. They kind of like pause around Jupiter, and that's one of the things that I'm interested in is why do they pause there? Are they eating? Do they just need to rest and take a break? And then they end their migration mostly around the Cape Canaveral area on the East Coast, and then on the Gulf Coast, they're mostly here in the Tampa Bay area, although some of them go even further north. We have detections all the way to South Georgia, so they do move pretty far. But yeah, South Florida is where you're most likely to encounter them. And if you do encounter them, please report it, because we yeah, so we collect that information. So if you want to be involved in some community science, you can call 1-844-4-SAWFISH, or you can go online to sawfishrecovery.org to report. So any information you can give us, if you can give us an estimate of how big you think it was, even better if you can get a picture of it, and then let us know kind of where you were and when. And so that information is really helpful for us to kind of track where sawfish are spending a lot of time. And while I'm talking about that, if you do see a sawfish, please don't, move towards it or do anything that might startle it. Give it its space, respect it. I mean, it does have like a 4-foot long hedge trimmer on its face, so maybe don't get too close. And then it also, you can cause issues for them, startle them. And if you happen to catch one, if you're fishing and you catch one, it's really important to leave their gills in the water, because they need to be in the water to breathe. So if you catch them, snap a quick picture for your report and for memories, but don't dilly-daddle with it, and cut the line as close to the hook as possible, so that it can swim off. But definitely don't handle it or do anything that might risk you or the safety of the sawfish. So that's very important.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's important information. We have one more question about sawfish, and we'll let you move on if that's okay.
Okay.
From the audience. So what is the estimated population of sawfish in Florida waters?
That's a good question to which we don't know the answer.
Are we talking hundreds or thousands?
Oh, it's hundreds. It's definitely not
Oh,
thousands.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, so there's some math that some people have done to try to guess at this. But there's definitely not a lot. It's definitely less than 1,000. Maybe even less than like 500 or 600.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We don't
Critically
know.
endangered indeed, right?
Yeah, we don't know for sure. And that's part of the work that some of my colleagues are doing, is trying to understand the population size. But there's not a lot. They're very rare. So we are working very diligently to protect this population of sawfish. There is evidence that the sawfish population is growing, which is another reason why we're not sure, because we think that they're doing better than they have been doing previously, but we don't know how much better. But we're getting more reports, we're getting more sightings, we're seeing more babies, make it to adulthood. And these are all really positive things. We're also seeing them move further north. So their historic range is all the way up the East Coast to at least North Carolina, and all the way along the Gulf to Texas. They also used to be found all the way down Central and South America, all the way to about Brazil and all throughout the Caribbean. And now you can only find them with regularity in South Florida and the Bahamas. So their range has shrunk dramatically. So the fact that we're seeing them move further is promising. The fact that we're getting credible reports further up north. The furthest north credible report I know of was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which is almost making
really
it
far
to
north,
North
yeah.
Carolina. So that's pretty cool. So we're optimistic. So it might be higher than we think, which would be great, but we really don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Because they're just so rare. It's hard to even estimate how many there are.
Nice. All right. There was one more question about sawfish, but we'll wait for the end.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
Cool. All right. So I also, as I mentioned, do a lot of work with social justice and inclusivity in marine science. So here are just some examples of some things that I've been involved with. So I actually did a project where I interviewed 50 marine scientists or former marine scientists that identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color. And I looked at what affected their career retention. So if they left, why did they leave? If they're still in marine science, why do they continue to be in marine science? What are the barriers and challenges that they face, and how do we address those? And so that's sort of an ongoing conversation that I have and work that I've been doing, and part of Minorities in Shark Science's mission, as well as the Marseille-Lace program, the Marine Science Laboratory Alliance Center of Excellence. These are all things that we're working on addressing, is these barriers, and how do we make sure that people are feeling valued and respected in this field, and that they know about this field, they have access to the resources to be successful in this field, and all of those things. I also, in that, discovered that scientific societies are a big part of what's driving people out of science, which is not good. So the majority of people reported conferences as being very negative experiences for them as Black, Indigenous, people of color. And so with some others, we did a deep dive on, and we used the society that I'm a member of, American Elasmobranch Society, as the case study to talk about how do we make this better? How do we address these things that people are talking about? And what ways can scientific societies drive this inclusivity in marine science? So those two papers, if you're interested in learning more about that, you could definitely check those out. And then also what I'm interested in is how do we make science accessible to the people in the communities that are being impacted? So we have a lot of what some people refer to as parachute science, where people go in and they study different plants or animals or processes in different places. And then they sometimes stick around for a little bit and then they leave. Sometimes they don't stick around at all. And all of this work is done, and the people that actually live there aren't involved in it. They don't understand what's happening. They don't have a say in it. And sometimes that research leads to policy changes that can negatively impact the people that live there in ways that was unforeseen because no one asked them what they needed or what resources they were using and all of that. And so myself and some colleagues, we wrote this paper about how to use ICON science, or integrated, coordinated, open, networked science, to be able to study things and come up with conservation best practices that are community-based. Doing community-based science, engaging the community, making sure that that data and information and knowledge gets back to the community and it's not just being extracted in a way that is kind of traditional for how we've done science in the past. Science has been very sort of colonial in nature, where some people or some countries and cultures have more infrastructure and power, and they just kind of go around and do research wherever they want. But the people that actually need that information aren't supported in exploring their own ecosystems and being able to manage their own ecosystems. And so that's what that paper is about. So if you're interested in reading that, you could check that out. Currently, I am working on a project dealing specifically with inclusive conservation, combining local ecological knowledge with scientific knowledge and making sure that that gets to policymakers, because unfortunately these three parts sometimes don't talk to each other. And so that is what I'm working on specifically with the fishing community in Myrtle Beach. As an aside for who I am, my family's from Myrtle Beach. I come from a fishing family of subsistence fishers who rely on the ocean directly as their main source of food and otherwise live in a food desert. And so different policies and changes to how resources are being managed is basically making fishing in Myrtle Beach almost impossible for subsistence fishers. And that's negatively impacting the community, health-wise, economy-wise, and then also there's some conservation concerns with that. Where are the fish going? Why is there not enough fish to support this community anymore? And so that's a project that I'm working on, again, a community-based conservation project where I'm interviewing elders from the community and talking about how things have changed over time, and pinpointing what changes and regulations and shifts have caused the decline of these fish species and access to fishing. I also am looking, yeah.
I was gonna say that's really interesting and heartening that you're doing that work. Because a lot of those communities, like as you were saying, have been doing it for a very long time. So they have that knowledge of the ecosystem and how things work and where the fish go. And
Yeah.
all that local knowledge is extremely valuable. And so it's good to see that you're starting to push the scientists to take that and not, as a resource and for more knowledge to bring everyone forward. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, and to your point about this local ecological knowledge, I have this picture on here, which is my grandmother, Evelina. So she passed away when she was 84 years old, and she fished her entire life. So that is, 70 plus years, her entire
Right.
adult life, 70 plus years of information just locked away in her singular mind. And she was really the inspiration for this, because I have heard stories and talked to her when she was still alive, and the things that she knew was incredible. And so in science terms, she is a long-term data set. She meets all of the requirements of being a long-term data set inside one person. And there are dozens of those folks in Myrtle Beach, and they're all starting to pass away. And so that's why I'm working on this project right now, because like I said, the fishing culture is being shut down for various reasons. It's getting hard to do it. And so that information isn't being passed on. And so I'm trying to grab it before this information is lost forever. And so that is a big part of this. And that's why I'm specifically talking to the elders in the community, because they have 50 plus years of information that can maybe help us turn this situation around, so that my generation, the generation after us, we can continue using these resources and being able to support the community.
That's so fascinating. I would love to do a follow-up interview with you later on to see what you've learned, and to maybe hear some of the interviews you've done with these locals. That'd be really interesting.
So another big issue here in Florida is Florida red tide, which is a harmful algal bloom which causes fish kills, a lot of devastation around this. And we see the floating fish, we see the dolphins and the manatees stranding and all of that. But what isn't often talked about is the marine predators, the sharks, the rays, the large fishes, things like that. And so I'm interested in looking at how red tide is affecting them, and if they're able to avoid red tide, how are they doing that? So you've maybe seen videos on the internet of these sharks that are congregating in people's canals and things like that, because they're just trying to get away from the red tide. So they're, swimming all the way upstream, and they're ending up in people's boat canals and boat slips and things like that. And so I'm interested in that movement. And are they successfully avoiding red tide? Are they still being subjected to the toxins? Are there certain species that are more susceptible? Are there certain species that are able to survive harmful algal blooms, such as Florida red tide, and others that can't? And what's that distinction? And so that's a current project that I'm working on as well. All right, so that is a little bit about me and work that I do. And now I'm going to talk about Minorities in Shark Sciences, which is an organization that I founded with 3 others in June of 2020. So we're about to come up on our 3rd anniversary. Our mission is really 3 things. 1, education and outreach. We want to communicate science to the public, provide learning opportunities for kids in grades K through 12, and then once again, encourage people and educate people about the marine ecosystems and about sharks, and move them from fear to fascination. And then we have training and professional development, where we provide resources, mentorship, opportunities, etc., for early career professionals. So people that are interested in doing this work, we want to support them, because as you saw in my previous work, there are barriers and challenges that particularly people of color are facing. And we're trying to help support them to make sure that they stay in the field, because we're losing a lot of really great folks to these things. And then the 3rd is inclusive research. So facilitating collaborations across institutions and cultures and disciplines and countries, but having that research emphasize local knowledge and access. At the core of everything, the people that are most affected should be the people that have the say in what's going on. And that's really what we're working towards changing in marine science and marine conservation. And it starts with this inclusive research and supporting research that is collaborative and not exploitive in nature. So we're made up of more than 400 members, over 30 US states and territories, more than 30 countries. We have members on every continent except Antarctica, but we are about to technically have a Miss member for a couple of months in Antarctica, so I'm going to start counting it. And so we have members all over. Here are just some of our members. We also have Friends of Miss, who are people that don't identify as gender minorities of color, but want to support the mission and are involved in marine science and shark research and adjacent fields. And so they serve as mentors and collaborators and support within the network. We have professional development and networking events for members. And then we also do education and outreach, as I mentioned. It's one of our pillars. So here is an example of a booth. We go out into the community, we do these booths. We have these little boxes that different members can take into their communities to go talk about sharks and their relatives. And then, of course, we have our Gill Guardians. So Gill Guardians is a program that's sponsored by Save Our Seas. We have content available in multiple languages: English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese, hopefully coming soon. We're currently having it translated. We have it broken down in the portal by sort of grade, age level, so that you can try and figure out what's most appropriate for your child or for you or for whoever you're sharing this information with. So here are just some examples of the topics. So for early, young childhood, we have sort of a broad, what's a shark? Where do sharks live? What do sharks eat? And there's different coloring sheets and activity books and videos and things like that to help them learn about that. And then we have for grades 3 through 5, we have Wild and Wacky, so talking about all of the weird shapes and sizes that sharks come in. So all the way from a pocket shark to a whale shark, what's up with that? We talk about adaptations. So how have sharks evolved these things? What do they use these things like saws for? And why do hammerheads have hammerheads? And why do nurse sharks have whiskers? And all of those sorts of things. And then we do splendid species. So we highlight some species that kids maybe haven't heard about that are super cool. And then we have some talks about dermal denticles, which are the scales of sharks, and teeth. So we talk about shark skin and shark teeth, why they're shaped the way they are, how you can tell what type of environment or food an animal eats based on its teeth and its jaws and things like that. For 6 through 8, we have understanding extinction, be the change, climate change, bycatch and overfishing. We think that this is a really important age to start talking about human impacts and how we affect our environment, and really engage youth in this conservation effort, because we don't give kids enough credit, I don't think, for how much they are capable of understanding and the amount of change that they can do. So really educating them and teaching them about some of the environmental issues. And then for 9 through 12, that's sort of more focused on, hey, are you interested in being a scientist? How do you do science? So we have different projects and activities that they can do that kind of give them a taste of what doing science is like. We have different lectures from different scientists talking about their research. We talk about biology. We have a little virtual shark dissection and things like that. And then we talk about evolution and ecology and all of these topics in more detail, to see if we can, tug at some people that are maybe thinking about going into a career in marine science. And then, not to be left out, we have things for adults too. So we have educational infographics and videos about policy and conservation, how to be involved in policy making and conservation. So a lot of people don't realize how much you can add, like that you can go to commission meetings and you can sign petitions and you can go and talk to your legislators, and then you can be part of driving that change. We have videos of a day in the life, basically scientists walking around with cameras recording what they do in their day-to-day life. We talk about vulnerable and endangered species. We have guides on identifying sharks for people that are diving or snorkeling or fishing, and they want to know what kind of sharks they encounter. And then we have little short posts, blog posts that sort of break down scientific literature to layman's terms so that people can stay up to date on what we're learning in science, but not have to go and digest a 30-page scientific article, which is maybe a little bit too much. So this is an opportunity for people to learn about what's being published without having to go and read the really dense, often hard to understand scientific articles. So the link is up here in the corner. So it's free. Just log on, make a little account, and you can access all of these courses in all of these languages.
That's fantastic. So they're like little virtual modules that you go through. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if I was a teacher, I could go through it on my own. Are there lesson plans included? So I could pull from it and implement in my classroom?
I'm glad you asked, Lance. So we have our ambassador program, which is for educators or anyone really that's working with minority youth in grades K through 12. You can sign up as a Gill Guardians ambassador, and we actually have train the trainer sessions where we teach you how to implement Gill Guardians curriculum in your classroom. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up on our website and become an official ambassador of Gill Guardians. So that is the answer to your question, Lance.
Yeah,
yes,
great.
We have a training session for that.
That's so nice.
We also offer live Zoom courses throughout the year. And then we also have things available by request. So if you're a teacher and you're wanting to do a lesson and you maybe don't want to fully become an ambassador, you just want a scientist to come and do a lesson in your class, we have some Zoom things available by request that can be led by our members. So these are shark scientists working in the field from around the world. So that's also a thing that we offer as part of the Gill Guardians program. So lots of ways to get engaged with the content and with all things sharks and rays.
Nice. Are the online courses or the online through Zoom courses, are they just for students, or can adult groups sign up to have presentations as well?
Anyone, yeah. So we usually, whenever we announce a Zoom class, we'll say like the target, age that it's for. So we try to vary it. So we do some for adults, some for younger kids. And then by request, obviously, you can just tell us what age range your folks are, what they're interested in, and then we can match with a shark scientist who can talk about that topic.
How often do you do them? I know you can do custom ones, but how often do you do like the preset ones?
So typically there's like 5 or 6 a year that are preset. So we generally have them mostly during the school year. And we'll do them like sometimes they're on a Saturday or in the evening, so outside of like school and work hours, so people can log in. So we announce that through our mailing list and all of our social media channels. And if you are registered on the Gill Guardians, you get an email alerting you when there's a live course that is open.
Okay.
Awesome. So we also do in-person things. So we have camps. We have both a spring break camp and a summer camp where campers get to learn about doing science and actively do science and participate in science. So here you see some campers seine netting, and they are learning about estuaries and the importance of estuaries for little baby fish and invertebrates to grow up. And so that is part of what they're doing. And then they also do some work with looking at plankton and understanding plankton communities and how that impacts things. So we not only talk about sharks, but all of the parts of the marine ecosystem with our campers. We also do science at the sea, or science on the move, as we call it. So science at the sea is where we actually bring students to the ocean to do different activities, learn different things. And then science on the move is sort of our mobile classroom where we will take ocean to people that maybe can't get to it. So that is what we have available. We have different members all over who have these little kits, and they do different things in their local communities. And so that is some things that we do as well. As I mentioned, we have professional development things. So we have workshops, and these are for folks who are 18 and older, so people that are interested in getting involved in shark research. So we actually take them out on the boat and explain how we do our gear deploying and how we take samples, how to safely handle sharks and work with sharks and all of that. And then we also offer fellowships. So people are able to go to any of our partner institutions and do internships. And we cover everything. So travel to and from, lodging, and you get a stipend. So it's an all expenses paid, because one of the big barriers for people getting into marine science is financial. A lot of internships are unpaid. There's a lot of pay to play, where you have to pay to be able to participate in things, a lot of expectations of working for free. And that's just not a viable option for so many people. And so we have these fellowships as an opportunity for folks who wouldn't be able to do these sorts of things otherwise, have access to them. And we have our Diversifying Ocean Sciences program. Even more increasing accessibility, recognizing that not everyone can drop out of their life for 2 or 3 months to do an internship. The Diversifying Ocean Sciences is a hybrid program where they learn skills and information and work with mentors throughout the year. And then in the summer, they do a 1-week intensive hands-on program. So we have 3 concentrations. We have lab techniques, field techniques, and marine technology. So they learn about those areas throughout the year, and then they get to apply that to a hands-on week-long workshop. So it's sort of like a crash course. You've learned everything, and now you get to apply it. So you have these skills now, but you didn't have to go and walk away from your life for 3 months to be able to get them. That's what the Diversifying Ocean Sciences program is all about. We also provide travel funding for conferences. As I mentioned, conferences are a big thing, has a big impact on whether people stay in the field. And so we're really working on making conferences good experiences. So we've started offering ally skills trainings at the conferences that we go to. We have events. We are a community and a resource for people as they're going through conferences. So we're able to make sure that everyone's feeling comfortable and welcome and all of those things. And so we really just have a presence at these conferences that a lot of shark scientists are going to. This is a picture from the joint meeting of ichthyologists and herpetologists, where the American Elasmobranch Society meets. We also attend SACNAS, the Society for the Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in STEM, and SICB, the Society for Integrative and Comparative Biology. So all of those conferences, we kind of go as a force. So you have like a whole group of people help combat that isolation and eliminate the financial barrier of attending conferences. And as I mentioned, we have a lot of inclusive research. So we connect people, these shark scientists all over the world, to do research and work together and create some positive change in their communities, but also have support and infrastructure that supporting local research where there might not be that infrastructure to do those things, connecting them with people that have the resources to be able to support them, and encouraging that collaborative and not exploitive research. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have a book. So if you're interested in learning about some of the science that's happening with our members, definitely check that book out. Tons of really great information and research there. And here's my contact information if you want to get in touch. But I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any more questions.
Yeah, well, thank you. It sounds like you're busy.
Yes, I am.
But there's a lot of important work to be done. So I commend you for tackling all that. It's great work. So good going. So yeah, so if anyone has questions, please post them into the chat. We'll spend some time doing that. I have a few to get us going. Well, I'll pay tribute to our last question about Sawfish. An audience member asked, as we were talking about Sawfish earlier on, talking about the dwindling populations. Hopefully they'll start to rebound. But what's the birth rate? How often do we know that information for Sawfish, and how often do they reproduce, and what's the gestation period, and where do they go to do it?
Yeah, these are all great questions. So in terms of Sawfish reproduction, we do know some things. So we know that they are pupping in mangrove shorelines. One of their main pupping grounds is the Charlotte Harbor area in the Caloosahatchee, the mouth of Caloosahatchee River. And then we also have a lot of pupping happening in the Everglades National Park area and 10,000 Islands Wildlife Preserve. There are maybe other pupping grounds. We don't know about them yet. We in Tampa had some pups that were born on a public beach. Oh, wow. And that was a wild occurrence. And we don't know where she was trying to go, but I don't think it was that beach. I think something happened. So there might be an area where the Sawfish are pupping in the Tampa Bay area. We don't know. But those are the two areas that we know. Other things that we know that they pup every other year. So they have a resting year. So they'll give birth, and then the next year they will not mate. And then the following year they will pup again. So we do have that alternating. Sawfish are born live. We actually, my former advisor, it got the first recorded pupping event of a sawfish on camera in the Bahamas, which is pretty wild. Someone had a GoPro rolling and the sawfish started giving birth. So that is wild. And it has now happened twice. Greg Palakis's team at FWC also witnessed a live sawfish birth, I think last year. Wow. In like the Indian River Lagoon area, I believe. So we know a lot more now because we've seen it happen as an event. But yeah, so we know where they're pupping, but probably not everywhere. We know how often they pup. We have a guess or a general range of how many pups they have. So somewhere between like 14 and 20, we think, based on their closest relatives. So there's 5 species of sawfish. So there's a little bit more known about the other species, and we're just kind of assuming that they're very similar, but we don't actually know. Wow, that's interesting. I think I'm definitely going to add pupping and pupping grounds to my vocabulary now. It sounds so cute. Yeah, so we have a few more minutes for questions. Just so anyone listening has any questions, please feel free again to put them in the chat. Jasmine, it seems like you are doing really well in your career and involved in a lot of different things. And it seems like you're very, very passionate
about what you're doing, and that's probably why you've stuck with it and have and excelled. So someone that's in just starting their career in marine science with shark science, what would be some advice you might give them to pursue? How would they follow in your footsteps, if you will?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say my biggest advice would be to follow what you're interested in and follow everything that you're interested in.
Mhm.
It's okay, especially early in your career, to have a bunch of different interests. Obviously, I still have a bunch of different interests. I'm all over the place. So I think part of the beautiful thing about science is that at the root of science, it's asking a question and trying to figure out the answer. So any questions that you have, follow that curiosity and see where it leads you. It's very easy to sort of get that imposter syndrome and feel like, oh, well, I don't think I'm going to be able to answer this. There are tons of things that nobody knows the answer to until someone finds the answer to it. And
Right.
that's how that works. And so you could be that person. So don't be discouraged by anything, being like too hard of a question to answer. Just follow your curiosity and see where it leads you. And also don't be afraid to, if you're interested in have curiosity about different things, follow all of those different things and
Mm.
see what really gets you going. What you're interested in. And that might be several things. Like I got a whole Venn diagram of my life. So it's fine to have multiple interests because
Right.
it's all connected. So yeah.
That's great. That's great advice. Just to follow, and I kind of like this idea of, like you proposed, of treating your life like the scientific method, right? So try out. You have a question, try it out, right, and see what happens. That's amazing. So I know that the Save Our Seas Foundation, the sponsor of this of the speaker series, as well, has funded the Gill Guardians, supported the Gill Guardians project. But going forward, how do you see that project expanding? And what if you were given the blank check tomorrow? What would you do with it? Where would you go with it?
Yeah. So we are just wanting to continue to add content and really build out these resources for people. And what I would love is for anyone to log on and become a shark expert. Like there's so much resources there that someone could teach themselves an entire like degrees worth of information.
Mhm.
So that's the goal, is that all of this information, it can't just stay in the ivory tower. Everything that we know, everyone should know and everyone should have access to. So that's the big thing. The second thing is being able to bring this to more schools and more community groups in person. And
Mm.
that's really what the largest resource requirement is for
Right.
all of those, making all those materials in those boxes, shipping them to all these people, people taking time to go and do these things, because we do compensate the people that go and do these outreach things, because we at MIST do not believe in working for free. No,
Right.
we don't do that. So it is there's some money and resources required to do that, and so we're sort of limited now, and I would love to be able to expand that and
Right.
take this more places.
Yeah, that sounds nice, to be able to go and do more, right? Physically go to places and get more people to come to you. Um, well, we have about a minute left or so, for one last question. Um, how would someone from the general audience, how would they get involved? How do they learn more about what you're doing? How might they get involved with shark science if they're not in the South Florida or Florida area? Where should they go? What should they do to get involved in shark education and conservation?
So you can go to Gill Guardians. Shameless plug. Go check out Gill Guardians, the resources that we have there. There's other really great organizations that have great content for you to learn about. Sharks for Kids is one that comes to
Mhm.
mind. Um, there's lots of things on the internet, and there's documentaries on like streaming platforms, on YouTube, things like that. Books. I'm a big proponent of libraries. Go
Yes.
to your public library, find every book on sharks that you can get, check it out, read them all. And then aquariums. If you're near an aquarium, aquariums are really good places to learn about marine science and sharks. There's tons of ways to learn. And again, following your curiosity. Don't be afraid to go ask somebody something. I have people that randomly email me all the time, and they're like, "Hey, I have a question about sharks," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll answer that question about sharks." And then when I answer, they're surprised. Like, I mean, you asked, like, yeah, I'm going to answer the question.
You
Don't be
asked,
afraid
might
to
as well
ask the
answer,
question.
right? Yeah, it's amazing. Well, that's great advice. We really appreciate you coming in tonight and telling us all about what you're doing and helping us go from that fear to fascination with sharks and rays and everything in between. So, Jasmine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This is great.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. Thank you. Thank you. So for those of you that are still here, thank you all very much for attending. Thank you to the Save Our Seas Foundation for supporting this evening. Again, we are from the Museum of Discovery and Science in Fort Lauderdale. Here's our lovely museum, connecting people to inspiring science, and environmental sustainability is one of the things we really push for. And the Save Our Seas Foundation is helping us do this, to connect you to inspiring scientists like Jasmine, and go from, like I said, fear to fascination with sharks. It's so amazing. So join us next time for the Save Our Seas Distinguished Speaker Series. See if I can get it going. For interview with Matthew Skumal, President and CEO of the Bimini Biological Field Station Foundation, which I think Jasmine actually does some work with. June 1st from 6 to 7 p.m. Matthew's going to be giving an overview of what they're doing there at the field station, and some of the shark research that's happening there. So join us then. And until then, we'll see you. Thank you very much.